It's good to be back with everybody again. It's good to be back in the shul, although I keep coming. But it's good to have others here with me while I offer a few words of Torah this morning. So when I went to pick up my daughter from college this year, a few months earlier than she should have been coming home, but because of Corona, she was going to be completing the semester at home, doing her classes virtually online. And out of instinct, I said something to her as she got in the car to come home that later I regretted because, she's an adult right now. She gets in the car and I said to her, I want you to know that I have work to do when we get home. So I can't be responsible for entertaining you. Now, the reason why I said that is because, as you know, I have a few children, and one of the phrases that I often heard from them when they were children were, "Daddy, I'm bored." Now, I don't know if you ever heard that from your children, but, when I used to say that to my father, he used to say something to me that only as an adult now I recognize was horrible. But my father used to say to me, when I would say, "Abba, I'm bored," he would say, "Go play in traffic." I don't know if you had parents who said that to you, but, and that's because a parent, certainly on this Father's Day or tomorrow's Father's Day weekend, you start to think about all the parenting mistakes that we make. Go play in traffic is probably up there with one of the big ones. But it stems from a very important place, and that is parents don't feel a need to entertain their children, or at least they didn't when I was raising children or when my parents were raising children. Today, parents seem a little more responsible for this. And I feel this even more strongly now during COVID as we watch parents be turned into teachers as well, responsible for taking care of their children all day long, all the time. I certainly would have lost my hair a lot sooner than I did if I were stuck in this circumstance. But the truth is, boredom does lead to some very difficult, challenging moments. You know that the phrase "idle hands makes devils work" is an important phrase, right? And that is, if you don't have something to do, it's easy to get into trouble. And we know that from children who will often explore and discover new things in the kitchen, in places throughout the house that maybe we wish they hadn't discovered on their own. That given the task of entertaining yourself, you may end up doing things that you really wish you hadn't done. And so it's reminiscent, of course, of this morning's Parsha, where Moses says, "Go into the land of Israel," and doesn't give great instruction. And so because of that, they're left to their own devices, and as children, which the Jewish people really were in the desert experience, they discovered some things maybe they shouldn't have gotten their hands into. And they allowed their minds to wander in directions that maybe they shouldn't have. There's a wonderful book that I was alerted to this week in the Wall Street Journal called "Out of My Skull." And it's written by Mr. Dankert and S. Eastwood. And it's about the role of boredom in our lives. And in this book, they make the case that there is a certain amount of boredom that's good for you, right? Because it allows your creativity to unfold. But in general, boredom isn't great. Because boredom, say these two authors, leads to monotony. It leads to a lack of purpose. It's a poor fit between our skill set and the challenge of the moment. And what we find, therefore, is usually a negative outcome. And that's what happens with the spies sent into the land of Israel. They're ill-equipped for the task ahead of them. And they're unable to meet the challenge of the moment because they aren't the visionaries that Moses was, who sent them in the first place. And they had time to think while they were out on this journey. And the Zohar, one of the key books of the Kabbalah, says the following: They were thinking to themselves while they were out on this journey of all that could go wrong, not for the Jewish people, but for themselves. And this is what the Zohar says. If Israel enters the land, say the spies, the Zohar says, in imagining their conversation, if Israel enters the land, we'll be deposed as heads, and Moses will appoint new leaders. For we deserve to be the heads in the desert, but in the land of Israel, we're ill-equipped. And so imagine what they must have felt like, says the Zohar, realizing that they were becoming obsolete because they embodied the boredom of the desert experience. Because they were so short-sighted that they couldn't adapt to a new reality. And therefore, they would be replaced. And isn't that true? So much of us in our lives that upon feeling as though maybe we're no longer needed, we begin to act in a way in which we wish we hadn't acted. This season, this time of year, this challenge in our lives asks us, how do we adapt to a new reality? And how do we use these moments of what seemingly might be boredom to unleash a creativity about our new purpose and our new goals in our lives as we move forward? Otherwise, say these authors, we will go out of our minds with the negative thoughts and the negative possibilities and the negative responses. Say these, if you want to remain relevant, if you want to remain a part of the experience, then you're going to have to think creatively in this moment in which you may have a little bit more time on your hands to repurpose yourself, to challenge yourself to be something more than you were in the past. Otherwise, you'll become obsolete. I saw a commercial this week on television for a new dating app. The dating app is set that, first off, that whole market is exploded. But this new dating app says we match you so well with a partner that as soon as you go on your first date, you will delete their app. Their app will be so successful that your first act will be to delete it, to become obsolete. The job of every teacher is to make him or herself obsolete. But if we don't want to become invisible, we will have to use this time to repurpose, reimagine, rediscover what it means to be who we are and what it means to be in community. I've often said that one of the great aspects, characteristics of our congregation is our ability to adapt because we're agile and we're ever-changing and understanding that we need to meet the responses of everybody and to stand for so much. So this week, I'll offer you that challenge to ask yourself, how can I repurpose, reimagine who I am so that I can continue to make my experience relevant and purposeful in this new time of reopening. Shabbat Shalom. We continue in Chatzi Kaddish, page 184. Please rise. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah v'yalamad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayedecho